Why is Maverick leadership necessary right now, and what makes it transformational? This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are disrupting for good. I'm Nicole Jansen, your host, and our guest today is Judith Germain. She is coming to us from the UK, and we're excited to have her here today. She is a strategic innovator, a chartered fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. She is a leading authority on Maverick Leadership and a C-suite mentor, consultant, and trainer. Like I said, she's based in the UK. She has her own podcast. She has her own magazine, book, radio show, all under this Maverick Leadership brand. So I think she's a little bit passionate about Maverick Leadership. So we're going to talk about that today and what that means for you as you are listening. How do you become a Maverick leader, and what does that look like? And I think we're also going to talk about some entrepreneurial lessons that perhaps that she has learned, because I'm curious about, building this brand that she has built and the success that's come with that. It's an international brand. So Judith, welcome to Leaders Transformation. We're glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm glad to be here. I've been listening to you for ages, and it's kind of a bit humbling to even be here myself.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I was on your show, and I'm excited about that coming out soon as well. And so and now here, continuing this conversation is just really, really exciting for me as well. And for those of you that are watching, apparently pink is the order of the day. So if you want to be a Maverick leader, apparently you need to wear a light pink dress shirt, but just kidding. So we both got the memo apparently, and are wearing the same color. So that's kind of funny. But before I go any further, I do want to mention, for those of you that are listening that may not be aware, I get a lot of times people ask me, Nicole, what is exactly that you do yourself? And so I am a leadership consultant and coach as well. And this podcast is actually brought to you by my coaching and training company. And so if you're a leader and you're looking to be better, do better, make a greater impact, you can go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching, learn a little bit more about the services I provide and my style of coaching. And you can also book a free consult with me where we talk about where you're at, where you'd like to go, and what's it going to take to get you from where you are to where you want to go, the breakthrough that needs to happen. So you can go on leadersoftransformation.com/coaching, and there is a scheduling link there. All right, let's get to our conversation with Judith, and I'm going to call her Jude because I know she goes by Jude for her friends. And so I want to start off with talking about this idea of Maverick leadership. What is it, and how did you become so passionate about it for yourself and begin to define leadership in this specific way?
Okay, it's a good question. So for me, Maverick leadership is a philosophy. It's a way of being. I've described it as not put on that leadership cloak when you get to work. It's about the underwear you have when you get up, because it's that important. It looks at who you are and what you do. And I've been defining Mavericks since 2005 as willfully independent people. So it's willful in the terms of determined to get something done despite what other people say, as opposed to a toddler stamping their feet going, no, 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 no. Not that type of willful, more sort of curious and innovative.
Got it. So, and then how did you become that for yourself?
You know what? It's all that thing about gamekeeper turning poacher, isn't it? It's just, I always was different. I always thought differently from other people, saw things in a different way, and expressed myself in a less than tactful way, I should say. And over the years, I discovered that I wasn't the only one like that. I was the sort of individual that would look at something and say, you know what, that emperor is totally naked. I know you say there's clothes, I can't see it. And when I moved into HR, I found that the people that I totally understood are the troublesome talent that nobody else could understand. And then I started to see some similarities between them and myself. And when I left corporate land, I decided to really focus on that, not just the troublesome talent, but those mavericks that can make a huge difference And I looked at leadership and thought to myself, what is it about leadership? Why is it that people are finding it so difficult? And I found that really good socialized mavericks are fantastic leaders. So I started to explore that, because I don't know about you, but I'm just fed up with people not doing it properly.
Yeah, I hear you. And you mentioned a term there, socialized mavericks. And I know that you have a manifesto. Tell us a little bit about that. And because I know some people, when they go socialize, they go, uh-oh, are we talking socialism? And so.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yes, that's true. No, all I'm looking at is that in terms of, I have like there's four types of people. You have your conformist, and we know who they are. You have your extreme mavericks. So they're the ones who will do things because it's centered on them. It's what they want, and they don't care how it affects others. Then you get those that are socialized. And it doesn't mean that they're mavericks with their claws taken out. It means in comparison to an extreme maverick, these are the people who are more socialized. So they will work for the greater good. They will be loyal. They'll do the right thing. And then you have those maverick behaviorists who act like socialized mavericks in the work arena, but conformist when they're out.
Interesting. Okay. That's very interesting. So talking about this idea of, and it kind of brings me back, what you just said there about the different types, brings me back to what you said in the beginning about, it's not about stamping your feet and no, but it's actually about doing things in the face of adversity and doing things in the face of maybe people not wanting to do it a certain way. Unpack a little bit more the difference between that.
Yeah. For me, leadership is personal, and it's personal to the people who receive your leadership, and it's personal to how you demonstrate that. So it's about what your own values and principles are. And maverick leaders will not violate their values and principles regardless of what the cost is. And I think that's the biggest difference between maverick leaders and other leaders, is not only will they do the right thing and they'll get the job done and they'll do it very, very well, but they're highly principled, and they recognize that they're role models. So they will ensure that they are role modeling the right behavior to others. So that's, for me, that's the essential difference. It's not just the fact that maverick leaders are great at strategizing, innovating and executing. They'll do the right thing as opposed to what's right for them. So they will sacrifice sometimes what they want for the greater good of others.
One of my favorite movies is Top Gun, and Maverick in there, he starts off by being the kind of guy who does whatever he wants to do, even if it's at the cost of others. And then, of course, realizes what that impact is, and then decides, later on, he kind of comes full circle. And so I think about that when I heard the term Maverick leadership. I was thinking about that. And as you described it, it made me maybe also think about the fact that, and maybe have you noticed this, is that leaders might start off as the type of Maverick leader that does whatever they want to do, and then becomes more socialized, as you describe it, and realizes, that there's a better way to do it. There's a better way to get results. I think about like some of the young, hard charging, driven men and women who get into the leadership, role, or even into corporate and want to move up quickly. And then just needing that mentor that guides them, and life can be a great mentor as well. Life lessons will teach us, but to be able to shape and mold their leadership style into something that actually serves the greater good. Have you noticed that? Do you work with people that are kind of like wanting to move along the pendulum?
Yes, because for my view is everyone can be a maverick leader. You don't need to be a maverick in any way or shape or form if you want to be a maverick leader. And what happens is that you go into leadership, and there are so many poor models out there. I mean, just look at the global stage for a start. So people will look and go, this is what I want to do. But over time, you can see that if I want to get what I want, I need to do it differently to what I'm currently doing. What is it that I need to do? And often that is about, using your skills for storytelling, aligning, looking for the win-win-win. So how do I win? How do you win? How does society win? And if you start to think of your leadership in those terms, that you will naturally change what you do. Because let's face it, if you look at the people in the workforce now, but your late millennials, Generation Z is coming along, and what are they? They are, if anything, demonstrating maverick traits, even though they may not be maverick. They want to work for leaders that they can trust. They want to be treated with respect. They want to make impact really quickly. They want the work to be flexible around them. And in the past, only mavericks were able to secure that because they were good at what they did, they were highly skilled, they were opinionated, and you wanted to please them. Well, now you've got thousands of people, hundreds of people in your workforce who are all like that, who haven't earned the right. So you're going to have to change the way that you lead. And what I see is organisations are not set up for that. They don't. I mean, recently I wrote an article for a magazine about having a hybrid thinking mindset and not just thinking about hybrid working. It's that kind of, if I take all these different elements together and put them together, what's the greatness that I can get from that?
So in your own life, as you've worked with, and I know you maybe give us some examples of organizations that, or scenarios that you've been involved in where maybe there was some resistance to this. And then how did you deal with that? Because I'm thinking about, okay, so as you introduce this new concept, any new concept usually meets with some level of resistance. And so, and leaders, sometimes they have this tendency to think that, I know it, I should know it. I've been doing this a long time. And I'm, and they kind of have a perception that it's working, even if it's not working. So I guess my question is how do you approach that? How do you get through that resistance and start making the impact that you're able to make with them as an advisor and as a consultant? And as I said, maybe using some specific examples that you've, that you think of.
I think what the first thing for me is that I'm not an on the off the shelf type of individual. I never have a set solution, which forces you to listen to what it is that people want. And I always ask the questions that generates what they think the problem is and what the real problem is. And quite often that's the first step. What really is the problem? Because it's almost never the problem that's articulated. And I think for me, because I have a huge toolbox with many tools, I start looking around in that toolbox and say, what concepts, aspects, things that need to happen to enable you to achieve X, and what is the compelling reason for change? I never do anything that doesn't produce behavioural change and something that's going to stick. So I will ask loads of questions, lots of scenarios to really drive down to what is it that you really want to do? And then once I've figured out what it is that they really want to do, I then start putting together different elements to see if that would fix. And then I dummy run that with the client. So it sounds to me that you want to change the capability of X group of leadership. If they need a little bit of this, and this, would that work? And they will generally say yes. And then I will design something from scratch to deliver that. And I think the ability to really design something that is absolutely tailor-made for that client is what makes a difference. Because I'm never imposing, this is what you need. I don't impose it, because I believe leadership comes from within. But by asking the right questions for someone who's realistic, who is resisting the change, they're more driven to make the change because they can see for themselves why they need to do it, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And what I'm hearing in there is a quality, like an underlying quality of adaptability and versatility. So when you were talking about it earlier, I got what you were saying, and then now I actually get it at a deeper level in terms of when you're going in, and I'm a big advocate of that, is to create a tailor-made solution. Yes, we have, big toolboxes that we can refer to and pull out of, and we have experience. And so there's certain things that we know work, and yet you can still tailor the suit to who it is that you're working with and what it is that they actually need.
Yeah.
But to be able to do that creates a mindset, you have to have a certain mindset of versatility and adaptability to be even able to pivot that way, which I think is very valuable, especially in this today's climate.
Yeah. I can give you an example. I was working for one client who, one of the things that they needed to do was to embed a new value set and mission set. So I got them to send them all the information, and I got background in HR, and I looked at it and I said, you know what, I wouldn't express it in this way. And I changed it and I said, this is how I would express it. And this is what I think people would be able to understand and do. So they took the value set, which was, I don't know, probably 15 things, down to 5 key things. And I said, I'm not sure people can hold this in the head. I think this 5 is better than this 15. What do you think? And they were like, yes. I was like, okay, I'll embed. So as most people would probably say, here's your values, this is what you need to do. I don't do that solely. I embed those values through everything. So you're constantly doing it without even thinking about it. So by the end of it, you're totally embedded. And I think that's that difference, is by going, yes, let's be flexible. And it's interesting that you mentioned about versatility, because I talk about Maverick Leaders being driven, because, I love an acronym. So D has been determined. So we will do the thing we said we're going to do. Having the right reputation. So that's not just character, it's about competence, capability as well. Influence. All Maverick leaders are really good influencers. Being versatile. So you can hear and go, okay, let's scrap that, add this, take this away. This will give you what you want. Being able to really kind of execute. So you can't be Maverick leader if you can't get it done. And Ed is for narration, being that storyteller. So I think you paint the picture of what it could be. And I found that people want to get to the new picture, because you listen to what the organisation wants and you go, so what you mean is this. And you tell the story, you tell them their own story that they hadn't considered. And everybody wants to go with that story because it sounds so great. Like, I could make this story a real thing. And I think that's the difference. I think most, if not all, Maverick leaders do that.
Well, and it actually brings up a really good point, because there's a difference between drive and driven, if you will. With that N makes a huge difference, because how many times have we seen somebody who is very capable at driving themselves, but to drive someone else or to drive an organization is quite different. And it's that narration. It's one thing to know it in your head. It's another thing to communicate it, articulate it, and actually enroll other people in that process. So I love the fact that you've included that narration in that storytelling, because I think it is really, really critical to be. It's like sales is communication is, like the number one skill in business and in life. Why? Because it's really about articulation. It's about a communicating value and co-create. There's a lot to it, right? Co-creating a solution together and all of that, and enrolling people and inviting people into a possibility. I want to shift gears for a moment, because you are an entrepreneur. As I alluded in the beginning, you've got a bunch of different things going on. You've got a radio show, you've got a podcast, you've got a magazine, you've got a book. So what was your biggest obstacle or maybe defining moment in your career where you were like, right, I've been trying to do it this way, and now I needed to be the maverick in my own business, and I needed to change and do something different to get a better result?
Your questions are always great. And I always feel a slight twang of embarrassment when I have to answer one of your questions, because I just think it's just so silly. And I think the biggest thing for me, when you come out of corporate, especially if you're a senior in corporate, so you're like, and then you come out and no one knows you, no one's interested in what you've got to say, and it's almost like starting at 17 again or something like that. So what do? You go to learn other people. You see all these successful people doing stuff, and you go on the courses and whatever, and then implementing what they were doing just doesn't seem to work. and I couldn't figure out, why can't I do this thing? And the reason why I couldn't do the things that the guru, people that I recognised to be brilliant at what they did and they had great results, was because it wasn't applicable to me. And the thing that was holding me back was like, everyone says I have to do loads of cold calling. I've got really great training from the experts. I can't cold call. But why? Because the clients are like me and I don't like cold callers. So subconsciously, there were things that I knew was never going to work it was authentic to me and the people I was going to work with. But I ignored that because I was new and the experts were saying I had to do that. So it wasn't just, there's lots of little things like that you just thought, oh, I must do that because everybody else is doing that. And it's so anti-Maverick. That's why I say it's a bit embarrassing, because it's the most anti-Maverick thing I can say. But I think we all fall for it, don't we? We all fall for somebody else. It's a bit like when I wrote my book, I was really struggling because I've been taught how to do it and I was trying to do it in a linear way. And then I realised, but my brain isn't linear like that. So once I wrote 2/3 of chapter 1 and all of chapter 7, and then it came together perfectly because that's the way my brain was working. But it took me months because I kept trying to write it in a linear fashion and I was not thinking about the subject in that way.
I love that. And the reason why, yes, I asked that question is because I think a lot of us can relate to that, where even if we consider ourselves Mavericks, we still find ourselves doing things. And it's kind of like challenging ourselves all the time and saying, why am I doing that thing? Am I doing it because that's the way I work best, or that's going to give me the greatest result? Or is it because that's what others told me I should do? Now, if you're starting out and, you don't know anything about it, you don't break the system until you actually know what the system is. There is that part of it. So this isn't a license to just start from scratch, because it's like, you will, it's like trying to recreate the wheel, all the time. And you take so much time to get to a certain point where if you learned and you kind of see what everybody else is doing and then go, right, okay, that's interesting. What is going to work best for me? I think that works better. So you can learn off other people's experience. But that being said, I totally relate. I did that at one point, I think a few different points in my life, where I was like, well, that's what they say. So I'm going to be the student and I'm going to learn and I'm going to do it exactly the way that they recommend doing it. And it totally didn't work for me because it was like wearing somebody else's clothes. I think of the story in the Bible where David was going out to meet Goliath, and Saul, the king, says, here, wear my armor, if you're going to go out there. And he's like, this doesn't fit. It's huge. It's heavy. I'm not used to wearing it. I'm a shepherd boy, and so he's just like, I got to take all this off. It may have worked for you in battle, but I don't think it's going to work for me trying to wear your armor in the battle that I've been called to. And so what did he do? He went in dressed the way he normally dresses as a shepherd boy, with a sling and 5 stones, and the rest is history. And so if we can take that approach, and sometimes even the simplicity, sometimes as you go along, people, we can get very complicated in the way that we do things. And when you step back and look at it and say, you know what, we don't need all that complexity. It's actually far more simple. Like you said with the value system, it's actually not 15 things, it's 5 things. And people will remember 5 things versus 15. And so sometimes smart people, you and I work with very smart people. Sometimes smart people like to make things complex because it makes them feel smart. I know I've done that in my life as well.
You know what, when you was talking, it made me think the stupidest thing I think I did when I started out was this is again so anti-Maverick, it's embarrassing to admit. I allowed other people to define me and what I did. And then once I thought, I got so put up saying, no, it's not that, it's this. And I just said, I'm defining my job. I'm going to define what it is. And other people said, no one will ever pay you for that. Well, hey, that wasn't true. But, you know, people turn around and say, that job doesn't exist, the one you've just said that you do. So no one's going to pay for that. And lucky enough, I've reached early enough that sort of decision to say, you know what, I am going to create this job and I'm going to find the people who want to pay for this, because I don't like the other jobs you're saying that's what I do.
Yeah. And that's usually the conformists that are saying you should do it the same way that it's always been done, because that's the right, you know, that's the way we do it. So yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy when you stop and think about it, but when you're in it, it can sound very compelling, right? Well, you know, I mean, everybody does it that way. So why don't we do it that way? Well, is it getting the result that we want? And it might be getting a result, but is it getting the best result? Recently, I was talking to someone about a specific situation, and we were making a decision on it. And then we said, well, let's pray about it. So we ended up praying about it. And it was like God said, you know, that's okay, but is that my best? And there's a big difference between the two. It could be okay, and maybe you're getting results, but is it the best possible result?
Yeah.
And so when you're being that maverick, like you're talking about, it's challenging the status quo and saying, like, what if we did this differently? Maybe it's working for a certain group of people or in certain circumstances or to a certain degree. But in the certainty, right, is what we oftentimes are looking for. But what if we tried something different? And what if we could break through and create unprecedented transformational results? That challenge that we've got to challenge that status quo in order to test what the limits are.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially now this is the time for the Maverick leader. It really is. I mean, because if you want to thrive, you need individuals who understand how to make good, lasting, sustainable decisions without the past as a predictor. So you go to business school or any kind of leadership development, and they teach you, look at the patterns of the past to predict the future. And Maverick leaders never did that anyway. They'd go, that's an interesting, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's interesting. Whereas now we cannot look at the past. We can only look at the patterns of the past and predict the future, but also build into your prediction room to move at short notice. And Maverick leaders are really great at doing that. And what we need is Maverick leaders within every organization. So that's the person that is cleaning the floor, you know, or paying the lawyer, the assistant. Everybody needs to have that mindset, because you need everybody pulling together and going, this isn't going to work because, or this is going to work, you know. And that's the thing. We have to break those old, well, we didn't do it before rules, or it's just not possible. And I think if you come from a background probably like, you know, I think we're very similar, where we've worked in many industries, we're not constrained with, it can't work like this in this industry. We're going, oh, you can run a shop 24/7. So we could schedule 10 people for 12 hours, easily done. You know, we can think through, because you've been in all those different industries and you're constantly thinking, and we need that.
Yes. And that actually brings up a really good point. I remember years ago when I was in Toronto and I was pitching to a particular company, and they said, oh, well, there's this other consultant and they work with all the people in our industry. And how much experience do you have in this particular industry? And it was a very specific, like, promotional products industry. And they said, you know, they work with like all the top 30 companies in the city. And I said, well, that's great. So what are they going to tell you different that they're not already telling everybody else? Like, where are you going to, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Here's the advantage. I've worked with, and you, it's the same thing. It's like, we've worked with all these different industries, so we can pull from different industries and innovate based on, hey, you know, nobody's trying this, but that would really make a lot of sense in this situation. Just like FedEx pulled from the pizza delivery business, you know, free, or what is it? 30 minutes or it's free. And they kind of took that same concept and say, if it's doesn't arrive by 10 a.m., it's free. They kind of took this concept and applied it to a different industry and disrupted the industry for the better. And but you have to be able to think. So you've got to open your mind up to different possibilities and even learning about different industries and what they're doing. So Mavericks look wide, not just strictly narrow. I mean, there is a point and there's a period of where you want to be laser focused, but they look wide to see some of the different possibilities, and then they make a decision on the right path forward.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day in something I was writing for a magazine, and is that Maverick Leaders narrow down, but only at the latest possible point. So they start wide and then they'll narrow and then they'll check with other people, then they'll keep. So just to make sure that everything is considered, they'll still make a really fast decision, but they'll only narrow down after they keep checking that there's nothing else. What's a different perspective? All this new information's come in. And I think Maverick Leaders are really good at holding stuff. So they run what if scenarios all the time with everything. Yeah, we can do this. What if? Yeah, okay. So we've got this over here just in case it changes. So they're very flexible, very easy to pivot. And I think that's what's needed now. But they'll do it because they're great storytellers, great narrators, and they're great at good principles by bringing people along. And that's the difference. And people, they'll always be thinking of how is this going to be received? Leadership is personal when they're doing something, and building that into the solution.
Yeah. And they're staying focused on the outcome. They're staying focused. So they're not just, because some entrepreneurs have a tendency to be all over the place. And so that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having this outcome and then just being flexible. What is the saying? Put your goals in concrete and your plans in sand. It's being flexible to be able to achieve the goal that you have. You're on mission, you're focused on one consistent mission, and it's just how you're going to get there will be determined by what's the best route and what is the best route at that time and all the different factors. So that's really good. How do people find out more about what you're doing and what you're up to?
Okay, the website's a good place to start, which is maverickparadox.co.uk. So that holds quite a lot of information. I am on all the socials, either under my name, Judith Germain, Germain, or Maverick_Paradox. If you're someone who likes to be challenged, provoked by a swagger of Mavericks, there's the Maverick Paradox Magazine, which is at themaverickparadox.com. Or you can check out my book on Amazon too, I guess, which is the Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. There's a theme there, isn't there? Can you see?
Yes, for sure. Again, very focused. And then there's a variety of ways that you get to that outcome. So awesome. Jude, thank you so much for being here today and sharing what you're passionate about and your expertise, and helping us to really navigate through this season of disruption in leadership, which is exciting. And I love what Tony Robbins says. He says, your past doesn't need to equal your future. Yes, you can look, as you mentioned, you can look at your past and see patterns, but sometimes the past and history can also teach us lessons to say, this action created this outcome, and we don't want to recreate that again. So we're going to need to look at different actions to create better outcomes. And so you've given us some valuable insight in how to do that today. So again, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I'm pleased that you allow me to come on here today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you found this valuable. I encourage you to all the links to connect with Judith and connect with her on social, but all the links that she's also mentioned and the resources that she has are all going to be on the Leaders of Transformation website in the show notes. And I also encourage you that we've got over 400 episodes of other leaders and difference makers that I've interviewed over the years that entire library is available for you on the leadersoftransformation.com. So go check it out. And the cool thing is there's actually a search field. So you can type in the topic or you can search by category, lots of options in terms of finding what it is that you're looking for and the information that you need to be able to help you become the leader of transformation that you're capable of being. We'd love to hear your stories. You can also reach out to us, send me a message through the contact page. You, of course, can find us all on social as well. And next week, we're going to have another amazing guest on this show, so stay tuned. Until then, have a great day. Be a leader of transformation in your own arena this week. Challenge your thoughts, challenge the way that you do things. Ask the tough questions that Judith has offered you today so that you can create better results going forward. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.